Okay, welcome to a Monday. This is the Mark Moses Show, and I'm here with my good friend Luke Hendrick with Spectrum Sports 360. I had to bring it back onto our video chat of the day because everyone wants to know, Luke, what are you eating today while we were talking? This is very key. Now we'll start with that.
That's a very good question. So I'll hold it up for the fine viewers. We have some Brussels sprouts, and we have a lean turkey patty that was 96% lean with a scoop of peanut butter on top.
Why 96? Are you adamant at the store?
No, that was the best I could find. Because normally I get, when I make like chili or like a meat sauce or something, I get the one that's like, I don't know, like 85%. And then when I make turkey burgers, I try and get it in the 90s. So this was like, hey, I got 96. Like, let's go. We're getting good at this.
It's like you're rolling the dice.
But it doesn't really help because like I'll eat well for, I don't know, like 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think yesterday I had pizza, beer, and then I had Cuban food for dinner.
But okay, wait a minute.
So I just kind of undid it.
So that's your cheat day. That's what you're saying here on the show.
Well, you can have cheat days, but they turn into like cheat weekends kind of thing. So.
And especially since you live alone, you ate the pizza by yourself, didn't you? The whole thing.
I shared the pizza yesterday. I also left out that I had a slice of ice cream cake.
Oh,
I should have thrown that in there as well.
Oh, man. When you go cheat day, Luke, you go all out.
You got to go all in. And I do this too where like my girlfriend's a great influence because when we're together, she wants to eat healthy and she makes it a point to get good stuff at the store. If we have a dessert or something, it's like one dessert. It's not 15 of them. But when I go home, like I'm an Italian kid. So my mom is like, oh, food comfort. So it's not like there's meals. There are, but then it's food laid out.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like a gazelle in the savannah. I will just go and graze. So like I walk into the kitchen. Oh, look, there's crackers and cheese. Grab that. Oh, they laid out this. All right, well, have that. And then I come back and I'm like 8 pounds heavier from like a week with my parents.
Why were you not an offensive lineman in college? What happened here?
Well, I was big enough to be an offensive lineman. I just wasn't strong enough.
Oh, okay. Now
I wasn't strong enough to be a mathlete. Like I just wasn't strong.
I love Luke's corny joke for a Monday. That's the joke right there. That's what he went with.
I'll go. Now I'm going to think. Now I'm going to be distracted. I'm going to think about corny jokes this entire time because I'm going to splice them in.
We're here with Luke Hendrick, Spectrum Sports 360. I know you probably didn't get to see your dad. Did you give him a call yesterday and talk to him for a while?
I did. My dad was actually out golfing with my brother. He came over from Pittsburgh to spend the day with my dad, so I had a couple conversations with him. He was great, and I think if you live away from your parents, which, Mark, I know you do, you're a couple hours away. I'm more of like a day trip away from my parents. But look, anyone out there, just don't just wait till Father's Day. Don't do your once a week or once a month call. Call and text your parents. Just keep tabs on them. They're proud of you. Mine are proud of me. Mark, I know your parents are proud of you. Give them a call.
What I like about my dad is this is what
he looks exactly like you.
He does. I call him. He's Mark 30 years in the future. That's all he is. Just it's a time traveling episode. It's my dad does this thing now, and this happened a couple years ago. Dads will call you no matter what time of day it is. Mm-hmm. They don't care. 6 a.m., 2 p.m., 10 p.m. They're your dad. They brought you into this world. They will call whenever they want. Would you agree with this, Luke?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. And my dad's more of the early bird.
Oh, yeah.
In the household. So, I mean, there's no problems. Like when we were kids growing up, when I would say like middle school age, when my mom would wake my brother and I up for school, we didn't do the alarms thing. She always got up with us. So she would, hey guys, time to get up, open the blinds. All right, whatever. Like did it very casually. My dad was a nurse anesthetist for 30 years. So he was always up at like 5:30 in the morning. So when he would wake us up for school, he would fly the doors open to both of our rooms, turn all the lights on in the upstairs, and go, Dun, 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 and he would do it like you were in a military base just to be a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And you would be like, this is the worst way to wake up. But that's what he does. That is who he is. He will call you at 7 o'clock in the morning. Get up. What are you doing?
I know. And so my dad, he'll send me 55 articles from the New York Times. Did you see this? Did you see what they wrote about baseball? Did you see about this? I'm like, yes, yeah, I'm good.
Well, my dad doesn't do that because, I mean, like you and me, we're in sports. So we're seeing this stuff all the time. So he'll have conversations with me about football. But my dad sends me Snapchats. That's his thing. He's a Snapchat guy.
He goes on, your dad's on the Snapchat. That's what he's doing.
My dad's on the Snapchat, and he tries to talk tech savvy. So he knows he's being funny. But he'll go, when we have our phones out and we're doing something, he goes, oh, you got a video? Yeah, send that to me in a Vine. Like, that's what he thinks this stuff is. So that's what he says.
As he goes, my dad has this new thing, and I know we're doing this. It's like the day after Father's Day, but I think it's key here. My dad told me yesterday while we were watching John Wick 2, all right, this is very key. He goes, I'm going to hold off on getting a new iPhone until 5G is normal. I go, you know what? That's a good idea. I don't blame him. I might do the same.
Mark plus 30.
I know. I love it. Last night, if we transition here, this is very key, because I'm going to get a phone call from someone after all these comments I just did. We're here with Luke Hendrick. I know for the last couple weeks you've been working on this whole thing about 90s magic and especially 95 magic. For our listeners, tell us a little about what you did for News 13.
Yeah, we did a silver anniversary series. Obviously, this summer and the end of the season was the 25-year anniversary of the Magic's 95 run to the NBA Finals. Obviously, we know how it ended. Obviously, we know a couple of things that happened along the way. And my goal for all of this was not to rehash this Magic moment. You know, for me, growing up, I was 3 years old, living in Pennsylvania when the Magic were in their heyday. So I didn't understand it. So watching that 30 for 30 introduced me and reminded me of things that I had learned over the years. So for me, this was a way to really dive in, to not repeat that, but for me to really learn about this team. You can argue alongside UCF's national championship in 2017, that is the greatest accomplishment in Orlando sports. And you can argue the 09 team as well, but that was the first. They were so much in their infancy as a franchise at that time. They had two megastars that they were built around. And you thought very briefly that they could crash the glamour party in the NBA, that they could ruin Michael Jordan's glamour party. For a lot of people that you talk to that covered this team, when Michael left, Shaq became the guy that was the focal point of the NBA. He was the young, energetic unicorn that everyone gravitated to. And for a brief moment, especially after that second round series, you might have thought, this is the team that's going to do it. This is the team that wasn't supposed to yet take over the Eastern Conference, and they just might do it. And for me, it comes out to being the ultimate what could have been story in the NBA.
Did you do like multiple segments over weeks? Like how did you cover this?
Yes. So we did it where we lined it up with the anniversary dates of the series. Now, this most recent one, we actually aired a week later. Game 4 of the NBA Finals in 95 ended on June 13th. We ran it, what was yesterday? June 21st.
Yeah.
So we ran it a couple days, a week later. But the ending of the Game 6 of the 95 Eastern Conference Finals against the Bulls, we ran on that day. Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Pacers, we aired that day. So we broke it down really to the rise and keeping it kind of series specific. The first episode that we did was called Michael and the Magic. And to tell the story of the Magic, you can't tell it without Michael Jordan. When he retired back in 1993 for the first time, the door was open. And back at that time, it was a real pay your dues thing in the Eastern Conference. So you thought it was going to be the Knicks. They got there in 94. You thought it was going to be the Pacers. They were right there with them. And there was this team in Orlando that was every bit as talented, was every bit as well coached. They just hadn't earned their stripes yet. So you thought it was going to be a process. And boom, overnight, they become the team. And I think there was a sense around the NBA that you can only get so lucky. So that was the first episode. because Michael Jordan plays such a key part in how the Magic became what they were and how they were perceived. The second episode was Home Sweet Home, which is about the 7-game series with the Indiana Pacers. No one won a road game in that series. That was the other team that Brian Hill regarded as the best team in the NBA, better than the Bulls, better than the Rockets even. So that was a very interesting series to talk about because there's so many twists and turns along that way. And then this last one was the Houston series, which really comes down to the ending of game one, the tone setter. So for me, I really enjoyed getting a chance to tell this. I was able to interview 3 people for it, talk to a lot of people from a research perspective, not even interviewing, just background information. Had a great conversation. I have to give a lot of credit to Greg Warmoth over at Channel 9.
Yeah.
He was the guy that was really covering this team. He was in with Shaq. And for me, I wanted to get his perspective from a guy that covers the team now to the guy that was covering the team back in the mid-90s. So he was very helpful along the way for me.
You know, I've had Greg on before, and he'll tell you the stories where it's like his news editor is like, you're just following Shaq around. That is your job. That blows my mind. Just following this guy around. That's it. You're not doing anything else. And the fact that he's on the back of the jet ski.
Yeah.
There's no way. For all of our listeners out there, there's no way, liability-wise, you and me would ever be able to go on a jet ski now.
And there's no way that kind of access would be allowed today. I mean, you would hope, and you think with a lot of these players, and this is not – the Magic PR and communication staff is excellent to deal with. They are very accommodating. They are excellent to deal with. So in that sense, and after saying that, it's really hard for me to go and call Aaron Gordon and say, hey, I'm going to come to your house and we're going to do a one-on-one after the dunk contest. That just doesn't happen. Or I can try my best, but, you know, I have respect for the communication staff in order. It was a different time in the 90s, and especially for being such a young franchise, this happened so fast. They had to do so much growing up on the fly. And it really is remarkable what they were able to do in a short amount of time. And I think that's what makes the ending so disappointing, because it is, man, this team, it shouldn't have been a sweep. This team was good enough. You can argue maybe they wouldn't have won the series, but it shouldn't have been 4-0.
You know, it's funny. So we're here with Luke Hendrick, Spectrum Sports 360 on News 13. Check it out every night at 10:30. So yesterday I'm watching the Griffey documentary on MLB Network. And don't worry, if you didn't see it, John Alba's all over it on Twitter. Don't worry. He's there all day talking baseball.
Excuse me, John Alba's on Twitter?
John does a great job. We're just messing with him. So,
I love John.
So they're showing this one part, the popularity of Griffey in the 90s from a baseball perspective. And they show a Nike commercial. And I forgot about this one. Griffey's in the cage. And all of a sudden, you're watching 2 people watch it on TV in the commercial. It's Nick Anderson and Anthony Hardaway with Little Penny, played by Chris Rock. That's how famous the Magic are in the 90s. And then, on top of that, I watched the last 30 minutes of Blue Chips last night with Shaq and Penny and Nick Nolte. Those dudes, look, as you know, I'm a Bulls fan from Chicago as a kid. Everyone loved the Magic with Shaq and Penny. It's insane.
It's incredible. The only thing in the NBA that comes close to it in terms of a meteoric rise with young superstars is the Thunder with Durant and Westbrook. And Harden was a part of that, but Harden wasn't what he was yet at that time. For me, it is they put Orlando on the map. I mean, and I truly do think it is the greatest sports accomplishment doing what they did. And, you know, we had a debate on Face Off on our segment last night about what is the greatest sports accomplishment in Orlando sports history. And the UCF national title is incredible. But eyes being on Orlando, everyone fixated on it. No one knew what Orlando was outside of Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just call it what it is. And you get 2 young stars that took the NBA by storm. You have Shaquille O'Neal, who is one of the top 10 greatest players of all time. And it's not even close. The most dominant player of his era. coming in here, and he was so energetic. He was so charismatic. You don't see many people like him on camera. And so being in a small market like Orlando, relative to the other teams in the NBA, they caught this city on fire. They got the attention of the national media. They got the attention of everyone around. And to have that type of personality that they had in little Orlando, which is a Disney town, that became for a while one of the epicenters of the NBA, what was really remarkable to see.
Okay, just want to clarify. So your answer is the number one sports moment for Orlando is getting Shaq and Penny?
The number one moment for me is getting to the NBA Finals in 95. For me, I think UCF's turnaround is remarkable. But for me, we knew UCF could be capable of it. I think it was, surprising that it happened that fast, considering just 2 years ago that they were, or 2 years prior, that they were 0-12. But, I mean, they won the AAC 2 years in a row before that. They were in the Fiesta Bowl before that. You knew UCF was capable of this. I don't know if people thought this little Orlando Magic team, with how quick it was, how quick their rise was. And it wasn't that they just got to the finals. I mean, Mark, they dethroned Michael. And you can say what you want about Michael and him not being in shape. The guy dropped 55 in the next 5 games back coming out of retirement. I mean, Michael Jordan was still the best player in the NBA, even when he came back after an 18-month layoff. And they were the only ones, after he started winning titles, to put a stop to it. And this is the greatest athlete, you could argue, in the history of American sports we're talking about.
I always say the case, and I've said this to Nick Anderson, him stealing the ball from Michael Jordan legitimized the franchise, that they were for real. Like you said, they're a new kid on the block. They never won anything. When they win that game, win that series, okay, this is a real franchise now.
It's a real franchise, and that's an incredible moment because individually, no one had knocked off Michael. It was always team failures with the Bulls. They weren't good enough to beat the Pistons as a team. They couldn't get over the hump against the Celtics. They just weren't built for that. They were built to win. And that was Michael Jordan making the mistakes late and Nick Anderson taking the ball from him late. But I think even more important than that is they won 2 games at the United Center in that series. They went in there and won twice, which no one did back then. No one went into Michael's house and won. And the fact that they did that as a young franchise the year prior, made the playoffs for the first time, that postseason, they had never won a playoff game. They had never won a playoff series. So the fact that you win a series in Boston and then you go and knock off Michael, and then you have to turn around and beat probably the best team in the NBA, which is Indiana, incredibly tough.
Okay, here would be my answer. See, the city of Miami has the Dolphins. And everyone in the state, if you look at the history of Florida sports, everyone growing up was a Dolphins fan. You know what I mean? Starting out with the NFL. So most people, then you had the Buccaneers, but they have been terrible for 20 years until they finally broke through. I'll say the number one moment was getting the NBA franchise in the late 80s. Like, we're going to be a sports town now. We have a NBA franchise. And remember, they were going to be maybe the Orlando Heat. Maybe the Juices.
There were so many weird names to it, too.
It could have been the Orlando Heat, which is not a bad name. But you know what I think about is, remember, last year, Pat Williams came out, we want baseball in Orlando, right? We want to get – and everyone kind of what are you talking about? He probably went through the same thing in the late 80s.
He went through the exact same thing.
Yeah. How are we going to get basketball? The fact that they got a real franchise – I think that's the number. Forget UCF. The fact that it's a pro sports team, I think, is number one.
And it's a respected franchise.
Yeah.
Because at the time coming into the league, I mean, there were markets that were way more appealing than Orlando. I mean, Miami specifically, but Orlando was just, it's Disney. It's a tourist town. Do you really have a fan base? And I mean, they're top half in the NBA consistently in attendance every year. I mean, people in this town love the Magic. Now, you can argue a lot of those games get good crowds, because you have opposing fans coming in and wanting to see the Warriors and LeBron and Luka Doncic and whoever, but they're bringing in fans. They put out a good product. They are entertaining, despite the record at times. But for me, it's the fact that it's been sustainable. I mean, you look at Minnesota that came in the league at the same time, like the Kevin Garnett year. what has Minnesota done consistently? Orlando's gone to 2 finals. They've had, at the time, the top 2 players in the NBA with Shaq and Dwight Howard and Penny, you can consider like that. And Tracy McGrady was one of the best scorers the NBA has ever seen. So they've gotten great talent. They've had good teams. And the respect level across the NBA is maybe they've never won, but they've done the job well. They just didn't land LeBron and win a title like Miami did.
The problem with the Magic franchise is they can't get a player to stay with the franchise. The history, and I'm sorry to say that, this. Shaq leaves, Penny leaves, T-Mac leaves, Dwight Howard wants to leave. They all leave after a while. That's the problem. That's why when Nick Vucevic became a free agent last summer, they had to sign him. They couldn't be a franchise where no one stays. So they had to give him the money.
And before they gave a ton of money to Bismack Biyombo.
Yeah.
Which didn't turn out. So you had to pay Vooch. And it is a big deal for Orlando. It is a big deal to keep those guys. You look at so many small markets, which I consider Orlando being because it's market 18 in terms of NBA. It's on the smaller side. I mean, how many of these smaller markets are getting these stars? It's not a thing. It is a family town. It is a Disney tourist town. So for me, the Magic, it's hard for them to win in free agency, getting that big-time free agent. I've always said this. Orlando's blueprint should be Indiana. I mean, Indiana is a smaller market that never gets the superstar. Paul George has left. Reggie Miller stayed, but it's never been a star-driven franchise. But you look, they're always a top 6 seed in the playoffs. They always maybe win a series or they're competitive. The Magic have a chance, if they do that consistently, to get in it, to win an NBA title, to have a run, to be, hey, this is a really good team. We're going to bring in that free agent for a year or two that could be the difference maker. But I think if their goal should not be, we need to win a title every year, which I don't think it is to be consistent, is to be a player. And for me, I'm not so concerned the fact that they're an 8 seed right now in the playoff picture. I don't really think this team should be worried about, okay, last year we made the playoffs, so what do we have to do again? It should be, what's the next step? It's do it again. Get back there. Have a model of consistency. You can't take the next step until you learn how to be consistent. And I think if they get into the playoffs this year, which they will, they're a little more competitive. Maybe they're not, but now it says, okay, we got a baseline. We know with this team, we can do this, that we're going to be a bottom seed in the playoffs. How do we get better? How do we build on that? And that's what I think you're going to see moving forward with this team.
I love you're such a broadcasting nerd like me. You look up what the TV markets are for the other NBA cities. We're bigger than Cleveland, Ohio as well for TV markets.
We play this game a lot in the station.
I know you do.
John Alba and I will play it, and we play closest to the pin. I mean, within 5 markets. So if you give me a random market and I can get it within 5, I win.
Okay. Richmond, Virginia.
58.
Close. 55. Not
okay.
Bad. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Miami.
16.
Is it 16? Or are you just making that up?
No, it's 16, and it should be bigger.
I know. Well,
it should be bigger, but it's not.
I didn't know we're going to be.
I think it's because half of it is a Spanish-speaking market.
Okay.
So I don't know how that. I think that's what factors into the numbers being slightly lower.
I didn't know we're going to be playing this game moving forward. I like this game. This is.
You can start shouting them in face-off, like in the middle of the point. Just go, Luke Fort Myers.
Just do that, and you're going to say it out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the NBA will come back. 62, Mark. I'll do that.
Just do that. It's code word. That's what the whole thing is. The thing I'll tell you about UCF is this state will always be Gators and Seminoles, no matter what happens. I'm sorry to say that to UCF fans. Gators and Florida State will always be the 2 biggest brands. I think they're the 2 biggest brands, even over the pro sports teams in this state. I think it's Gators, Florida State. Like that's just my opinion.
It's up there. I don't think this is ever going to be a UCF state. No. I don't think, because you have too much. Like Pennsylvania is a Penn State state. It's not a Pitt and Penn State or Pitt, Penn State and Temple. But you have so many good programs down here. When Miami gets really good, that's obviously the thing. But I think what you can see is maybe moving forward, give it another 10 or 15 years, if UCF can stay consistent and be going at New Year's Six bowls and keep making noise for the playoffs and maybe getting in one of these years, I think you're going to see it be, hey, this is not just the Gators and Knowles State. It could be a Gators, Knowles, and Knight State. It can be. But it's never just going to be one. It's never going to be one that reigns supreme.
It was weird where 2015, they lose athletic director. George O'Leary's like, I'll be the AD and the coach. And then
that was fun.
Then they start losing games, and it just like you got to this point where there was a bar in Orlando where there was like, we're gonna serve free beer during
was it the underground or was it the basement?
I gotta look
one of them. I think it was on.
But it was like, we're gonna serve beer for free during UCF games until they win. What they didn't realize was UCF goes 0-12, so they give away all this free beer during those games. So then it's funny. You bring in Scott Frost in 2016. And I always remember this. We're hosting an event in Cocoa Beach with UCF. I'm hosting it. I'm doing my show live. We had Coach Abe. We had Johnny Dawkins, coach of basketball. Scott Frost were all there. And I remember UCF officials coming up to me, and they go, look, don't bring up 0-12. Whatever you do, that's in the past. This is in the future. Mark, whatever you do in front of these UCF fans, say we got this going in the right direction. They go 6-6. They lose the Cure Bowl, which is at I think at the Citrus Bowl.
Yeah.
There is no way anyone thought going into that fall that they're going undefeated and winning the conference. No way. And I was there when Mackenzie Milton came in for the first time in 2016. They took on Maryland at home and lost in overtime.
Yep.
No way, there's no way you thought this guy was going to become like a Heisman candidate type quarterback. It's one of the craziest stories in sports, Lou.
And this is not taking anything away from the players because they've been fantastic and they've been able to maintain everything. But coaching matters, Mark.
Yes.
Coaching, and when, it's laughable to me when I hear recruits say, I'm not picking the school for the coach. I'm picking no, you are. I mean, if you're a spread quarterback, a spread option quarterback, UCF might be the place for you. If you're a triple option quarterback or a pocket passer, there are other schools out there based on the offense that they run. Georgia Tech under Paul Johnson was great for a triple option quarterback and your big blocking fullbacks and your dive running backs, but now it's not. So yes, you have to pick the school. You have to consider the coach and what they're running in consideration. And with UCF, I think Scott Frost does not get enough credit because UCF fans fell in love. They fell in love and they had their heart broken. It's like that breakup. You think you love it, it's going great, and then he leaves. And obviously his success at Nebraska has not come. Maybe it won't. So I think it's a little bit easy to throw some salt in the wound there and say, hey, it's that guy. He wasn't that great. But I think Scott Frost did a fantastic job. And I give a lot of credit to Josh Heupel because Josh Heupel, one of the hardest things to do is maintain success. And he has. And I think UCF is in really good hands moving forward.
If Nebraska goes 9-3 with Mike Riley, Scott Frost is still the coach here. That's what I think about at the time. But I agree. Coach Hype has done a good job so far. And look, I tell you the domino effects all the time. If Mackenzie Milton doesn't get injured, he's still the starter. They win the conference again in 2019. Memphis doesn't win the conference with Mike Norvell. Norvell's not the coach at Florida State. That's how I look at things. That's my domino effect. I'm sorry. It's crazy.
So does that mean Josh Heupel's the coach at Florida State?
He might be.
Hey, Josh Heupel's got a pretty substantial buyout, but Florida State has proven we really don't care about money. Buyouts aren't really a thing.
I'm officially too old where I remember watching Scott Frost play college football and in the NFL and Josh Heupel. Like, as I asked these guys, I'm like, do your current players know that you played at a high level? And they're like, not really. No.
Okay. Fun question here. So we were asking this the other day. So Josh Heupel, a nominee for the College Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Who is more deserving to get in? Josh Heupel or Scott Frost?
Ooh. Did Heupel win the title?
He did.
Did they beat Florida State? I think they Yeah, I don't know if he could be the coach then of Florida State. If you're, if you, as your career, you beat them in the national title game.
I mean, Urban Meyer did beat Ohio State and then went there.
I will go Scott Frost with the answer because that's the last really great Nebraska team. And I know this doesn't really count for college athletics, but he gets more kudo points for changing positions at the next level to have an NFL career. When guys like, and I know I'm going to get in trouble, Tim Tebow and a guy like Eric Crouch, who won the 01 Heisman, said, no, I'm not changing positions.
Okay, let me ask you this. I think it's great that Scott Frost switched positions. Mm-hmm. But if someone were to come to you after you've been a very successful radio host here in the Central Florida area and said, Mark, we're going to give you an opportunity in this market. Okay, we're going to give you a shot, but you're not going to be on the radio. You're going to be a PA. You're going to be writing. You're not going to be doing what you love.
Well,
you're still going to be in the business. So it's like that thing where it's like, oh, he's selfish. If your dream is to be a radio host and you want to keep it going, like I get it for the sake of the team. Hey, be a team player, get in there. But it turns into a career at this point.
The thing I always say, and this has happened to me. Okay, you're going to offer me this job. Is it a full-time job? That's my number one question. This is not, and I say this is for anyone's profession out there. This is not a hobby for me. This isn't something I do on the weekends. This is my full-time job. I put in 15 years out of college to do this. This is a real job. I'm not here to work 3 hours on a weekend. So if I'm going to a bigger area, am I at least, and I'm not asking for Dak Prescott money here, but I need like a full-time job. So look, and I believe in myself so much that, hey, let's say I got a newspaper job at a bigger market, right? They want me to write. That'll open the door for me to do more radio. You know it will.
That's your preference. Yeah. And that's great for you. And if you understand that and you say, hey, if this is a way for me to get back to what I want, great. But to hold it against, I'm not saying you are, but there are a lot of people that hold it against people like Tim Tebow to say, I don't want to switch positions. I'm a quarterback. That is what I want to do. I want to be a quarterback. And if he doesn't get that opportunity, okay, then he can live with that. And that's what he wants to do. That's fine. But then to say you're selfish and you're doing this and that, we don't step inside the mind. We don't have the perspective of it.
I just wish he would have tried it. Like, go for it, man. I mean, he's trying baseball. He put himself out there like that. It's weird. Look, trust me, Tim Tebow's a great dude. He helps out a lot of charities, right? He does great on TV. I just wish he would have tried something, right? At a different
selfishly, we wish he would have tried something.
Yeah.
We wish he would have tried it. Yeah, just to see, because Tim Tebow's impact in the NFL, I mean, say what you want, but polarizing. And people watched. And people cared. And people showed up. It was fun to talk about.
I know. Hey, go ask the Pittsburgh Steelers. They lost that game, all right, against Tebow in the playoffs. That really happened.
Being a Steelers fan and a Tebow fan, that was a really fun weekend in my life.
Remember, the Patriots the Patriots beat Tebow and the Broncos the next week. They're eliminated, and that's what John Elway's like, get me Peyton Manning, like right away. I need Peyton Manning. Let's go.
Well, then everyone was like, oh, after he threw the touchdown to Demaryius Thomas, they put the camera on John Elway, and they're like, what do you think? That was incredible. Love that dude. Next week.
You got
get him out.
And remember, the next
and it's not just Tim Tebow. I mean, if it was like Kyle Wharton and you still had a chance to get Peyton Manning, I mean, it's not a slap in the face. It's not like, God, this guy is just horrific. We need anyone. I'll take Peyton Manning if I have to. Like, no. Let's use some common sense. You get one of the best quarterbacks of all time, of course you're going to take that.
You know what's crazy about those Broncos, and we'll wrap this up? It's like, so they win. I think this is right. They go to the playoffs, win the division. They beat Pittsburgh. They lose to New England. They get rid of Tebow. He goes to the Jets. Then they get Peyton Manning. Then 2013 happens. They have the number one offense of all time. Get to the playoffs, number one seed, break every record, and then lose to Joe Flacco in double overtime. I think that's the timeline of what happens. I could be wrong. Or is it 2012? All right.
No, you're right. It was that year. It was 2012 they lost to Baltimore in the playoffs.
Okay, all right. So
13, they went to the Super Bowl. The 13-14 season they went to the Super Bowl.
So 11 is Tebow. 12 they lose to Joe Flacco, wins the Super Bowl. 13 they get to the Super Bowl and lose like 43-8 to Seattle.
Seahawks. Yeah.
That is, let me tell you something. There are 2 games in my life outside of my Bears where I'm swearing at the television in disbelief. There are 2. Number 1 is we're hosting a Super Bowl party at Captain Hiram's in Sebastian for that Super Bowl. It is Seattle and Denver. The opening snap, the ball goes over Peyton Manning's head.
Mm-hmm.
And then the avalanche starts. I'm like, what is Peyton Manning doing in this game? What is happening? I was in such shock by the butt whooping that the Broncos took in that game. And the second, I probably told you this before. So we're hosting an event there. It's 28-3. I'm driving home for the second half. I'm listening to the radio, Patriots and Falcons. I'm listening, and I'm like, man, the Falcons are going to win the Super Bowl. Like, this is incredible. I drive all the way back to Melbourne. I start watching the second half. I am swearing at the top of my lungs, run the football, you idiots. Just kneel the ball. Run up the middle. What are you doing? That was the worst. Outside of my team, those are the 2 worst I've ever experienced in my life.
I was working in Georgia at a Fox affiliate in which the Super Bowl had Fox during that time. And, yeah, okay, it's a lot of fun to blame Kyle Shanahan. I mean, you gave up 31 unanswered points. There was no blame on the defense. There was none at all. Like, they were up 28-3, and it was just like, oh, it's the offense's fault. Well, you allowed them to score 31 points in the second half. Like, calm down. So that was a fun swing of emotion. I mean, I was covering it, so I was unbiased. I mean, obviously it would have been better for me at my station if the Falcons would have won, but whatever. The only, like, major swing of emotions I've had, I was 21. It was St. Patrick's Day in my junior year of college. That night was the final Big East title game of the old Big East. And it was Louisville and Syracuse. And the night before, they did, like, the grand old, like, oh, my gosh, for the last time, it's Georgetown, Syracuse in the Garden. Like, let's hype this up. So we had to have that swan song. I physically hated Syracuse at that point. I would scream, like, about the zone, like it's lazy. And you never let, like, Boeheim would never leave the state for the first 2 months of the season. Like, just always play at the Dome. And then a road game was, like, at Cornell in the Garden. So I thought that Syracuse team was trash. Like, I was like, I don't understand how this team is good. They had no offense. They would play the zone. They got so hot in the first half, I broke my TV stand.
You're that guy.
I was so – and I don't get that animated watching games, but, like, I kicked my TV stand. Michael Carter-Williams. Like, who the hell is he? And, like, kicking it as hard as I could and just – I was so mad. And then Louisville outscores them, like, 59-16 in the second half. Like, they murdered them. It was, like, one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And I am going nuts in my apartment. Obviously, it's St. Patrick's Day. You fill in the blanks. And what was it then? 6 years later, I'm at Magic Media Day.
I knew this was coming.
And Michael Carter-Williams sits down in the chair and we start the interview. And I just go before I start, you owe me a TV stand. And he goes, why? I said, because in a drunken stupor on St. Patrick's Day, when you decided to bank in a 3 against Louisville in the Garden, I was like, I'm done. And kicked the table. And he was like, dude, how do you think I felt? We lost the game. Okay, that's fair.
I'll tell you, I always loved the 2014 Florida Gator basketball team that made it all the way to the Final Four. And
the Gators that couldn't hit a 3?
Yeah.
They couldn't shoot.
They couldn't shoot. They lost 2 games. 2 games the whole year. They lost early in the season to UConn. Didn't lose a game all the way till the Final Four and lose to UConn. That's it. And I believe it's Shabazz Napier and Boatwright.
I will die on this hill, Mark. I will die on this. That is the worst national champion I've ever seen.
I know. Hey, from the American Conference, baby. That's right.
And who won the American that year? Louisville's 1 year stint in it won it. And I was so pissed off that it was that UConn team because I was in a real lose-lose situation because the championship was Kentucky and UConn.
Mhm.
And Louisville, that was the year after their title. And that was Russ Smith, Montrezl Harrell. They lost to Kentucky early in the season in Lexington by like 5-7. It was a good game. Louisville should have been a 1 seed. Like there was talk of them being a number 1 seed. They gave them a 4 and put Kentucky on the 8 line against Wichita State so they could have that Sweet 16 matchup.
Uh-huh.
They do. Louisville is winning the entire game.
Yeah.
And then Aaron Harrison happens.
Uh-huh.
And we lose the game by like 3. Yep. I am so pissed off. And then you couple it with the fact that we beat that UConn team 3 times that year by double digits every time. They won by 34 in Louisville, beat them by 15 at UConn, beat them by like 20 in the AAC championship game. And then UConn and Shabazz Napier, who should send a Father's Day card to Russ Smith because he was his daddy that entire season, won the title. Still not over it.
I'm in the Magic locker room. This is maybe it was 15 or 16. And Napier, I believe, is on the Magic, right? Mm-hmm. And he's a bench player. I couldn't look him in the eye. I was like, you took the Gators title. Like, I couldn't believe it. It's so crazy when you think about that season. It's a great year.
He got hot, man. I mean, he was a tournament player.
I like Jim Calhoun is just like, all right, give me a 6-foot guard who could, do the crossover. I need that player. And he took him all the way to the title.
And the guy has an outstanding career because he's mini Kemba. Yeah. Like, he's mini Kemba in the waiting. Like, he was there for the 11 title when Kemba was, I guess, a junior at the time. And then he goes in 13 or 14, or whatever that was. I guess it was 14. And does it by himself. And he had Ryan Boatwright, too. I mean, they were a good 1-2 punch.
They were awesome.
But that UConn team lost like 9 games that year.
Uh-huh.
They got blown out a couple times. I was just like, come on. This is a 7 seed.
You could have had, for the title game, could have been Florida, Kentucky, which met 3 times during the regular season.
And Florida won all of them.
Yeah, Florida won all of them and won by maybe a point or 2 in the SEC championship game. Mm-hmm. It would have been crazy, but let's wrap this up. His name is Luke Hendrick. I think we can go 7 hours on how much Luke hates other teams in the Big East.
I respect all of them, but, I mean, the old Big East, I mean, I was probably – the old Big East raised my blood pressure more than anything. But awesome. It was really good because you sent me a list of topics here, man, and we only missed 1 topic.
Oh, baseball?
Yeah. I mean, not missed. We just didn't touch on it. But, I mean, we both feel the same way.
You're like Rob Manfred. It's not a priority. So, whatever. We'll play, not play.
We're blaming Rob Manfred for everything.
As we should.
We shouldn't.
That's what they'll say. Mark, why aren't you married? Pff, Rob Manfred. That's the reason. He's screwing it up for me. Just use that. That'll be the analogy.
I mean, if I try to use that, like, I get what? I don't know who that is.
Bingo.
And then if I really try and press it, it would be like, you're an idiot.
Bingo.
Bingo. Yeah, I mean,
his name is Luke Hendrick. Luke, thanks for your help, man. I'll see you around, okay?
Always a pleasure, buddy. Take it easy. Thank you for having me.